so much that you're God. You know everything. You know what's going through our lives, and we struggle with the issue of trust. But Lord, we know that your desire is for us to learn how to give all our struggles, all our pain, all our hurts to you, because you understand. More than anybody else, more than even ourselves, you understand what we're going through. Yeah. That if we can just place our lives in your hands and trust in you, knowing that you make all things work together for good to those who love God and to those who are called according to your purpose. In Jesus' name. Amen. I don't know, when I listen to that song, it really touches me. How many of you like that song, huh? It's just like, it reminds us that, you know what? We all struggle. We talked about that in Sunday school this morning, how no one is immune to pain and suffering in this world. And if you've never experienced times when you just felt like it's all over, like I'm done, I'm finished, I cannot take this anymore. And I don't understand that kind of pressure so deep where you get to the point that you're so depressed that you end up taking your life. Especially for a young gal that had her whole life ahead of her. And you know, it used to be that I had this concept that if you committed suicide, then you didn't trust in God and you're going to go to hell. It wasn't until I had a good friend whose wife ended up going into her car and pulling out a revolver and shot herself, and her kids found her in the car. And I think, what makes someone so depressed and so hurt that they have to take their own life? And I find it to come to the conclusion that, you know what, I'm going to trust in God. That He will always do what is good and what is right. And that He will help the family through that circumstance. But the key is, they must learn to depend and trust in God. And when I think about our responsibility as Christians in this world, and since we all have experienced grief, right? Anybody never experienced grief in their life before? Losing a loved one? It seems like the older we get, the more grief we've experienced in our lifetime, right? Because especially when we get 60s and 70s and even 80s, all our friends seem to be dying off. And we experience more and more grief. But how do we handle that? How do we handle when our loved ones, our spouses, our kids, especially when our kids end up dying before we do? And I know people say, that's not supposed to happen. I'm not supposed to bury my kids. But what do we do in the circumstances when that happens? We all know that death comes. Death will come for everybody unless the Lord comes before that time. And we also end up blaming God and say, God, you don't understand. You know what? God understands more than anybody else what suffering is all about. Jesus spent His life in suffering. He even had His own friends betray Him. Can you imagine what Jesus was thinking and how He felt when Judas, one of His own chosen disciples, betrayed Him for just a little bit of silver? And not only that, is that He goes off being so depressed and said, life is over, I can't deal with this, and goes and hangs himself. Can you feel the heart of God when one of his own people gets so depressed because of what he did in his life. Does God understand? He sure does. But why is it that we blame God for the bad things that happen to us? Why is it that we cannot trust that God, no matter what kind of circumstances we go through, understands what we're going through and knows exactly how we feel? So I want us to focus on what are we trusting in. I try to pick a song, and in your bulletin it says, some may trust in chariots and some in horses. And the video that I was going to play for you guys was not clear, so we decided to choose another song. But some may trust in horses and some in chariots, but we will trust in the name of the Lord our God. Well, of course, we don't worry about chariots and horses, right, today? But how many of you ever had problems with your car before? Huh? Because that's how you would translate that version. Some may trust in Lamborghinis and some may trust in your Toyotas, but we will trust in the name of the Lord our God. You understand what I'm saying? How many of you had car problems before? Raise your hand. Huh? Car problems. Yeah. I know I've had tons of car problems, and sometimes I can fix it, sometimes I can't, so I got to go call a mechanic. Our van that we had, we had already had to have somebody come and drop the tank and change the fuel pump out of that. I cannot trust in my car because you know what? Cars break down. I can guarantee you that sometime or another, cars break down, no matter how good the car is. How many of you still own the first car you ever owned? Huh? Anybody? Well, at least one person does. Is it still running?
Oh, run it when I shut it off.
But the thing is, things will break down, things will deteriorate. And when I think about, how much trust we put in our things, I tell people, what would happen if you bought a brand new, what is it? Cadillac is sort of the image that, people think of as, wealth. If you have a Cadillac, you're doing pretty good. You bought a brand new Cadillac from the lot, and you drove it out into, let's say, the middle of Ron Jones's field, and never touched it. Never drove it, never touched it. What would it look like in 10 years? Would it be nice and shiny? Would it even start? If you never touched it, right? The battery probably would go dead, and the engine would maybe freeze up. I don't know. I'm not a mechanic. But the thing is, it will deteriorate. But if you use it, right, guess what? It's going to deteriorate a little faster. Because, you're going to be driving down grocery cart, parking in the parking lot, and you go shopping, and you come back, and you see a big dent, and someone opened the door and hit your car. It's gonna deteriorate. And we get so upset when minor things happen in our world, like a dent in a car. I was watching a little movie last night, and this gal had a fancy sports car, and this guy kind of got his key, I'm gonna say no, and he went over there and he did. What do you think she thought? How many of you ever had somebody a key your car before? Or slash your tires? It happens. Things in this world will not satisfy you, and if we place so much trust in our things, guess what will happen?
You're going to be disappointed.
We're going to be messed up inside. And Jesus preaches this sermon. He says, do not store up yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures where? In heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is a lamp of the body, and if your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. My wife's dad is a good example of a person that put God first. Because he was a farmer, he was a rancher, and he never missed, if he wasn't sick, missed a day of church. And you know what? He was a successful farmer. In fact, he won prizes on his beets, awards, whatever you call it, for his beets, his crop, his cattle. He was a successful rancher. But he always tithed, and he always trusted to the Lord. And that was the most important thing. And I need to learn from that. He never missed, because he felt that was an example of putting God first in his life. He says, but if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? And here's that one verse. No one can serve two masters. They will hate the one and love the other, and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more important than food, and the body more than clothes? And yet, how many people spend a lot of money on clothing? How many people, in fact, if you go to the mission store, how many have been to the mission store, you know? Some of those clothing they have on there, the tag is still on the clothing. And they're only, what is clothes? I don't know. I don't shop because I have too much clothes already. But the tag is still on there, and they're designer clothing. And people have spent money buying these clothes, and they don't end up wearing it. We live in a culture today in America where even the poor people have disposable clothing. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, when people move, I've seen it where it seems like, especially the poor people, when they move out of home, they don't care. They leave a ton of treasures behind. Why? Because they have too much of it and they don't need it. And then they're wondering why they have so much credit card debt. Being a person that has dealt with people's finances, a financial analyst was my title, and seeing the people that waste money. And it seems like it's the rich people that don't know how to control their money that really are in the biggest debt. I'm not saying that there's rich people that don't have debt, but the thing is, it seems like the doctors and the lawyers that I dealt with have a lot of debt. But I knew one person that he actually drove around a putt-putt car. It ran good, but it was a piece, like people would say, a piece of junk. I mean, it didn't look like a doctor's car at all. But you know what? I see a lot of rich people who put their trust in God that do not put their value on how nice their house is or how nice their car is and having the fanciest clothes. But you know what? They give away a lot of their money. A lot. And you know, we who don't have much money might kind of look at them and say, well, you know, they're rich, they can afford it, you know, type of thing. Why don't they spend the money more? Now I might be stepping on some toes. You know, if you're struggling financially, then maybe you need to learn, and there's this class called Financial Peace University. And you know, the neat thing about Financial Peace University is that it teaches people not only how to control your spending, but also how to trust in God. For some reason, God made money or the giving as a priority in a Christian's life. And so he has this thing called tithing. And you won't hear me preaching about tithing for the fact that we need to raise money for the church, but for your own good. Because what money does, it shows you, it's like put your money where your mouth is. It shows you that I do trust in God. And this is how I'm showing myself, is by, at the first of the month when I get paid, I'm going to give him my first fruits. And so I trust in God. But there's some people who, you know, like if you look on a dollar bill, right? There's this thing over here, right here. What does that say? In God we trust. But who do we give it to? We tend to give it to the government. We volunteer our tithe to the government. You understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
No, we don't voluntarily do it. How many of you want to pay your taxes? I mean, really want to pay taxes to the government. Especially the way the government is handling our finances, right? Trillions of dollars in debt. And so we say, in the government we trust. By putting, the government demands that. I know there's some churches that demand your tithe, but the government demands your tithe before you can give to the church. Because when you get paid, unless you're self-employed, automatically before you get that paycheck, your taxes come out of that paycheck. So the government can help you with all your needs. My government shall supply all your needs according to the riches of the government, which is in trillions of dollars in debt. So what has happened to our culture? What has happened to our trust in God? Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you'll wear. Is not life more important than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. How many of you like to watch birds? I know my wife has a bird feeder right out there in the yard, and she feeds the birds. But you know what? She doesn't have to put those feeders out there, because the birds will get fed whether she puts it out there or not. God takes care of those birds, and if God will take care of those birds, how much more will he take care of you? Because human life has more value to God than the birds and the animals. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying add a single hour to your life? And what do they say? Actually, worrying does the opposite, right? It shortens your life. And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his glory was dressed like one of these. And that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire. Will he not much more clothe you? You will faint. So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after these things. And your heavenly Father knows that you need them, but, and you all know this verse, right? Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. Now what that means is God is righteous. How many of you believe that God is righteous?
Amen.
You know, God is righteous, but you seek him and his righteousness in my life. God desires and created us to be holy people. And he wants us to live as righteous people. Seek his righteousness. Seek his first his kingdom and his righteousness.